1075 The Game Podcasting is sponsored by Modern Exterminating, a family-oriented company. Professional, honest, and dependable pest control solutions. We're your one-stop shop for all pests.
In this day and age, and I feel like Georgia did this with defensive linemen, you take as many as you can get. You let the situation sort itself out, and you are already under the understanding before those guys even get to campus, you're not keeping all of them for 4 years. You're bringing in as much as you can, and then you're turning them loose on the practice field, and you basically say the weakest link will transfer out.
Well, and that's what, going back to Alabama's dominance as a dynasty and what Georgia was able to do for a couple years there, winning their national championships, is you just look at how deep those rosters were when they'd lose, 8, 9, 10 guys in the NFL. They'd have an X guy up that had been on campus for 2 to 3 years and been practicing and getting sharpened by going against those other really good guys that were able to step in those roles and not really miss a beat. Well, now the talent is being spread out so thin. I think in a situation when you're a team like Georgia or other programs where you can actually spend the money to do that, you just load up on as much as you can. Say, all right, well, a couple of these guys are going to separate themselves. That's who's going to play. And like you said, you just assume those other guys are going to transfer out at the end of the season anyway.
I have my opinions. And Tyler, no offense, you're an outsider looking in and you're a little bit younger, but you also are a Georgia fan, if we're being honest, if we're being perfectly honest about who we are. And it ain't like Georgia is some kind of world beater in basketball.
They're not.
And
last year was their first tournament appearance in a decade.
And yet it feels like Georgia has had, well, it doesn't feel like, it is. Georgia has had more success in basketball, and I don't think anybody out there would say that Georgia promotes any more resources to their basketball program than South Carolina does.
And it's funny you mentioned that because, and I've brought this up many times, when I moved here and started doing this job, that was one thing that really stood out to me was how much this fan base, this state, this community cares about basketball and how invested they are in this men's basketball program for one that historically has not had a ton of success. And again, growing up in the state of Georgia, going to the University of Georgia, Georgia basketball is something that not everybody is into. And yes, there are certainly plenty of diehard Georgia alums and Georgia fans that care about every single sport that's played. But when you're out and about in the community in Georgia, if you're in the grocery store and you see somebody with a Georgia hat on, chances are that person's not really paying that much attention to basketball.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can talk to them about football, sure, but basketball, that kind of falls down the totem pole because, again, it's a program that's just not had a ton of success. So when I came here and got ingrained with South Carolina, again, you can make a lot of comparisons between the two programs in terms of success they've had over the years. The investment and care here in South Carolina men's basketball, and we'll exclude women because they're an anomaly and doing their own thing and very successful at it. Specifically, men's basketball is so much higher than I thought it was going to be.
How overly dramatic on a scale of 1 to 10 will we be if Indiana wins the national championship?
Overly dramatic?
Best team ever, history of college football. Never seen anything like it.
Well, I think we saw something like it just a handful of years ago. I think we're going to make a lot of comparisons of, they're very similar to LSU in 2019. What Cignetti did might be the greatest turnaround we've ever seen in the history of college sports. It's certainly going to be up for debate. I don't know if it's going to reach a hysterical level necessarily. You know what I mean?
You haven't seen me in full action on something.
Okay, well, hey, if you want to go hysterical with it, that's fine.
I love Shane Beamer, but some of the things he says do not add up. One of the things he said this year was trying to promote how well they've run the football during his time here. Factually, statistically, was not true. They ran it well for 1 year under Rocket Sanders.
Yeah, and Sellers obviously had a lot to do with that as well. But yeah, you look at the numbers, and they've been towards the bottom of the SEC, and I get it. Sack yards count against rushing in college, so that has something to do with it. But overall, they have not run the ball consistently at all in his tenure, save for that 1 year. And this year was obviously no exception to that. And again, what you have right now, you do not have a dominant, true number one running back, and you don't have the 1 year assassin like Rocket Sanders lined up to come in. What you do have is a couple guys in Matthew Fuller and Jordan Howell that have upside, that you've seen good things out of, that have good potential. And then you have already 2 guys that have committed to you that out of high school were good running backs, went to big programs like Ohio State and Penn State, but we don't know enough about them. We'll see what Stan Drayton can do them from a developmental process. And you're trying to land a guy in Christian Clark from Texas that has had a little bit of success, including in the bowl game just a couple weeks ago, that could potentially round out your room as a sixth scholarship back.
Unless something changes, I don't think we focus on the here and the now with the basketball program. They are what they are. They are what they are. Last night, Tyler, we call it as we see it. They're 10-7. They're 1-3 in conference. They got Auburn on Saturday. They get Oklahoma next Tuesday. They're a collection of in my opinion, they're a collection of good players. That's not a good team.
Yeah, I think that's fair.